welcome to Shooting the Shift. I'm Bam, that's Matt.
Hey.
Bryn's drinking.
Hello.
That's Milton.
Hello.
And this week we're going to talk about the future of the automotive industry, thanks to a magical government announcement about 2030. Matt probably has more information on that one for us.
Yeah, I did the research just before we started. Essentially what the UK government is doing is phasing out the sale of new and petrol diesel cars and vans to 2030. So you won't be able to buy a diesel, petrol only powered car after 2030, and then by 2035, if the emissions is higher than 0, you can't buy it at all. So essentially, we're looking at nothing. So we're only looking at hybrid, hydrogen, or electric after 2035.
I mean, so hybrid's not necessarily a bad thing. There's been a lot of ground made up since the release of the Prius.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, electric motors are brilliant.
Yeah.
But there's always, because you got them, the Ferrari LaFerrari. That's hybrid.
So you had a breed of hypercars that were all hybrid, and they were all done slightly differently. I believe the Ferrari was only. I think the petrol engine was always active and was always driving the wheels, but it was topped up by the battery. Whereas you look at the McLaren P1 that could be driven like a Prius, so it could be driven on just the battery for a certain amount of range, and then
But it didn't have a very long range, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, but
I think it was only about 30 miles or something like that.
But so weirdly, I have experience of Prius ownership, which looks worrying to Bryn, but I will caveat that with it was a Prius in a frock.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
It's the Lexus CT200H that I had.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Prius.
Yeah.
It's all Prius under the hood. I know that because I've got an InGen Prius race intake.
I love the fact you can buy a Prius racing intake.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Those two words shouldn't go together.
I know they shouldn't.
Prius and racing.
But
Unless
there's
you
an
have knocked
idea.
in the
There's
middle.
an idea for a future episode. Bam makes
Prius
Bryn
racing.
engineer a Prius race car.
I don't have a problem with hybrids. I'm just going to put that out there because if you would need a daily and you want something that's economical, that any hybrid will do it.
Yeah.
I've been looking for a while for a new Corolla, but they're still out of my price range, so it's hybrid. And without trying a round stop start traffic, I got 56 miles to the gallon without even trying.
Wow.
If you actually try and bother to hypermile it like a lot of people do, you could probably see 70 or 80 easily.
I used to get 68 out of the Lexus going down to the office in London. For my last.
And that's motorway driving.
That's predominantly motorway. And round town, 40 to 50.
Yeah, that's where it comes into its own.
The only problem is
35 in mine, and in my diesel.
I mean,
Really?
I then infamously sold the Lexus to fund the Stagia and
Single
went to
digits.
sub 20 mpg straight away.
You were just paying off your debt ahead of time.
We'll plant some trees or something.
The thing for me is I don't mind the economical, environmentally friendly daily because it's just a daily. It's just to get me from A to B in comfort. I've got to that point where I want my daily to be comfortable and have all the tech in it, and it needs to be an easy drive. I don't want to.
Yep.
I don't want to get into a race car and drive my 60-mile commute in a really low and hard, uncomfortable race car.
So
as much fun as that would be.
And I can get where Matt's coming from. And that's why I bought the Spike. But for a multitude of other reasons. partly because it was cheaper to buy the Spike than continue to daily the Stagia.
That's about right.
But I think when it comes to, I actually don't have a problem with electric. So one of our day job colleagues bought a Tesla, and let me and Matt have a go.
I was going to say we had a go, and it's the base model Tesla.
Yeah.
I can't. Is this Series 3 or whatever it's called, Model 3? Yeah, and it's the base spec version of that. So it's not got all like ludicrous mode and all the rest of it, and it's still fast. I was going to swear, but we're not 3 minutes in yet. But it's properly quick.
It's quick and like it's the torque's just there.
I think the weirdest thing is when you drive a petrol or a diesel car, you put your foot down and you get to the top of the rev range and you feel the dip in acceleration. You change up and then the acceleration comes back. In an electric car, you just keep going at that same acceleration. It's a linear acceleration chart.
Like I would love to get one on a track or on a strip and it not be a friend's. So if Tesla want to let us review one, we will absolutely shoo it around the racetrack in one of your cars.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Tesla, I've actually driven a car was Tesla powered but wasn't a Tesla.
Okay.
And it's that zero emissions R32 Skyline, but it's got the Tesla running gear in it.
See, that's interesting. So that gets us on to the next point of, and I think we're probably going to discuss this, and then we'll go back to what's coming. We've all got classic MX-5s, right? I, for one, if I can't buy fuel anymore, think I would quite happily put electric running gear in the R Limited.
I would too, because if it's a toss-up of electric MX-5 or no MX-5, I know which one I'm going to take.
It's I agree.
I'm moving out to the desert and making my own fuel.
Bryn the redneck.
Why am I not surprised?
I'd like to change my answer. I'm moving with Bryn.
The thing for me though is
we can use my half a degree in chemical engineering, Bryn, to.
I've watched Breaking Bad, so that's water.
And the important thing to remember from last week's episode about Breaking Bad is, you can really poorly Photoshop Bryn's face onto Walter White, and B, you don't need a desert to make a crack.
Oh, I was wondered where that tangent went. It's the pants, wasn't it?
The pants.
I've got to say though, I don't think electric cars are the future.
Right.
I think they're a stopgap.
Absolutely agree. I've been quiet so far because I'm not a fan of electric cars for quite a few reasons.
I'm not on board with them because, like, I am firmly of the opinion that what's better for the environment is for me to buy an old Series 3 Land Rover and keep it running. Based on the material, the carbon footprint of extracting new metals from the earth, the footprint of open cast mining for battery components.
So this takes me onto a good point of some research that Mazda did. And if I can find the document, we'll put it in the description so everybody else can read it.
Yeah.
And they did a study to find out what the emissions cost was of producing a petrol-powered car, including the running costs until the point where, on average, they get scrapped, versus an electric car. So production of an electric car, shipping it to wherever, and then the running costs of it on the other end. And petrol cars only have to be 20% more efficient with their emissions to be level with electric cars.
Or would they just have to run maybe another few years to offset that 20%?
So what they did was made the Skyactiv X engine, which is 30% more efficient.
But that's the problem. So what you effectively get, and I think South Park. Have you seen the South Park episode about Priuses?
I probably have.
Like, South Park put it really well. You get this cloud of smog that emanates
Yeah, I've seen it.
from I'm a hippie electric car owners, and Tesla's kind of dispelled that a little bit because they're just kind of a cool car, and if you've got a bit of money, you get one, and it's kind of a pride of place piece. You know, it's a status symbol. It's not just I've got an electric car because I care about the environment. It's look at my Tesla because I've got money. But there's just this notion that the perfect way to care for the planet is to have an electric car or a hybrid. And fundamentally, on a lot of levels, that's wrong.
Yep.
And, you know, and people are acting like it's a new technology. So throughout this episode, we're going to quiz Matt, Bryn, and Milts. And at the end
No
of the
cheating,
episode,
you two.
at the end of the episode, we're going to see who's got the most points. And whoever's got the most points next week gets to announce the single use, one only available My Birthday discount code.
And do they get to plug their own Instagram channel?
Yeah. Which, by the way, for Matt is...
No, he's not won it yet.
No.
Whoever wins
I'm
gets
just
to plug
letting
it.
everybody plug their own Instagram channels now, Milton.
No, they got to tune in next week.
I've got to tune in next week just to find out what...
Milton.
Find
sure
out
it's a lot
at
of-
MX5 Milton.
Now he won't win.
What about at Rear Axle Divergence?
Now I won't win.
And at Matt Graham Motorsport?
He'll probably.
That's out of date because I changed it.
Ah. At,
Well, he can't win now.
well, all right, he has changed it to at Old Man Motorsport.
That's not even right.
It's at Ruby Motorsport.
Yeah.
See, I do pay attention, everybody. We'll put them all down in the description later on.
I didn't know.
Speaking of description, as always, the rad website's there for merch for Bryn, Matt, and Milts, and the Violent Running website is there for merch for all of us. And there will be a collaboration T-shirt once we all settle on how many swear words I can put on it.
He said it out loud now, so it has to happen.
It's
Yeah,
happening.
exactly.
It's happening. It's happening.
He can edit it out.
Behind the
He's the
camera,
one that does the
I twisted it
editing.
on.
No, he's not.
Milton did twist
If
my
he
arm
edits
behind
it out now, I'll be wearing the wrong hat, and it'll make no sense.
So if at any point Bryn is wearing that hat, you know Bam has edited it.
Yeah, but he'll edit this bit out as well.
No, because I'll do this and just make his editing really difficult.
So anyway, the first
Back on
question.
topic.
The first question in the Violent Running Rear Axle Divergence Ultimate Electric Car Quiz.
Inaugural championship.
Yeah, the inaugural championship round. When was the first electric carriage developed?
1909.
Matt?
It was around that 1907.
Ryan?
I'm going to price is right this and go 1910.
Nobody's right.
Not surprised.
So
I'm
who's the
going
closest?
to let you have another round of guesses and tell you you weren't even in the right century.
1853.
Matt?
1887.
Closest one wins it. Milton?
Eighteen 88.
1828.
Wow.
1828. Bryn gets the point.
Ding! Insert sound
When
effects.
Mm.
was the first?
Oh, we're doing two questions, are we?
We're gonna do a second. We're gonna do a second question,
Okay.
right? So, when was the first rechargeable, battery-powered electric carriage?
1834.
No,
I'm going to go back 1920s.
1900 for me.
Well, Bryn gets that point as well. For the 1860s.
Oh, it took them a while then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as always, it's because the technology is the thing that needs to catch up. It's never the ideas. It's the
Or
same with
theory.
Mazda's SkyActiv X, which is HCCI, homogeneous charge compression ignition. The idea for that has been around for absolutely ages. It's been around in research, and it never worked because there were never good enough controls to do it. So what made that work was that electronics caught up, and Mazda were able to develop a control system that could actually do it in real time.
And if you want,
the same with anything else, it's the ideas are
Yeah.
always there.
But
and
I think that actually goes to show is that this idea about electric cars, that's been discounted. It's been discounted before.
well, and it was because the technology wasn't there, and
the batteries, it's all down to batteries.
it is all down to batteries. There's
Yeah.
a lot of problems with batteries, and they're getting better and better and better. You know, lithium ion came out, and now there's the carbon nanotube stuff, and they're incredible compared to batteries of the past. And if you go and look at the energy density of a modern battery versus a liquid fuel, you'll find it's still an order of 10 less energy dense, which is the big problem with batteries. And that is why I don't like electric cars, because ultimately a battery is not as energy dense as liquid fuel. Electric motors are incredible, but storing electricity is awful. It doesn't
Isn't it?
work.
I mean,
In a battery, it's really inefficient.
the reason I prefer internal combustion over electric is it roars like the dinosaurs it burns,
Well, yeah.
and it makes a good noise, right? That's the one thing I'll say about driving that Tesla. Like, the acceleration was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah? But in reality, there's this almost audio cue to going
Lift
fast
off.
in a car, and it's just not there.
But I think the thing you're trying to get at there, I think, is we'll probably all agree to this, is driving a internal combustion engine car, no matter what it is an experience. So it tickles all of your senses, not just the feel of speed and acceleration. You've got the noise, you've got the smell, and you've got all of it.
Yeah.
And electric cars lack that.
So Bryn, you're anti-electric.
I'm not anti-electric as a principle. I think it's a fairly good idea, but I've been reasonably close to this in terms of actual engineering, and I have, a bit more knowledge of, I think, what goes into it than a lot of people do, especially, that's in general public knowledge. And when you stack it up, pure electric is just not quite there. As I've said, the batteries aren't energy dense. You have the problem that if you try and generate electricity and then store it, you've got to constantly change energy from one form to another. And every time you do that, you lose a little bit. Whereas you put liquid fuel into something and then turn that into electricity straight away, that is quite an efficient transfer of energy, rather than you get stuff out the ground, you turn it into electricity, you transform it, send it to somewhere, you transform it again to put it into a battery, and then it transforms again to go into the motors, which is quite a lossy thing. And electric motors, as I say, are incredible, but
So, Bryn, do you think the answer is hybrid?
hybrid for now. Hybrid for
That's
now.
it.
And I would like to say, I also agree. I think it's a good thing that the government are saying 2030 petrol and diesel are banned, because that creates a necessity. We have to get round the problems. And so people will push for it. I still, whoa, something fell over in my kitchen. Still,
Don't you live alone?
yes, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I don't think batteries on their own will ever get there. You need electric motors powered by probably some form of liquid fuel, probably hydrogen. Hydrogen has a whole host of other problems at the minute that I will leave until we get there, because otherwise.
No, now.
So-
Now's the
No,
time.
no, I've got another thing I want to...
Now is time, Mr. Milton,
No.
Hang on.
for questions
That's-
3.
I was going to say, I want just a little bit more on hybrids first.
Okay.
I
And then
don't
question
think
3.
the most common version of the hybrid is the right one. So you look at a Prius,
Yep.
and it's battery or engine, or both. They both engines drive the drive wheels. You look at I think it's Carmen Fisker, or what Top Gear did with the Eagle ham thrust. That's a battery powered. That's an electric car, but it has a diesel generator on board to recharge the batteries. The
Okay.
generator does not drive the wheels, and that's more efficient than driving the wheels with them.
This brings us
That's
to
what Brendan suggested.
a really interesting question. So, petrol power to power electric motors to move a car. Which company first developed it?
Now,
I want to say Mercedes because they do everything first.
Okay.
But I don't think that's
Bryn's
right.
thinking about the ways that I've tricked you all already with this.
Say it again.
you did say car.
It is a car.
Yeah,
By
because
this point.
trains have been doing this for a very long time. That
Yeah.
was my first
So-
thought.
so-
Yeah.
so-
Aren't they diesel trains?
It is.
It's diesel electric.
It is technically the first hybrid car. Which company developed it? They still exist today.
Most famous is Toyota for the Prius.
I don't think they were the first to do it,
What-
though.
They would. What? When was
I'm
the
going to
Prius released?
I'm going Mercedes just because.
Okay, Bryn.
Prius was the 90s, I think.
I want to say it's Honda because it's the kind of thing they would do, but I think
But-
it's going to be something obscure
Could it
like
be
an
Honda?
American RV company or Hummer.
Matt.
Chevrolet.
I'm just trying to think of the companies that still exist. Because you already said it still exists.
Somebody so far is in the right geographical region.
So I'm going to change and go to Chevrolet.
I'm going to say BMW.
Nobody is in the right geographical. Matt is back in the right geographical region.
Oh, Mercedes then.
Audi.
No. I was going to.
Porsche.
Yes.
Wow.
And crucially, given we all know the Prius was a 90s released car and you all thought that was around about the first hybrid, when was the first Porsche hybrid released?
Going down
Production.
to 34.
Production released.
Production released. They made 300 of them.
I'm going 1934 again.
See, I don't know how long Porsche have been around, but
Matt,
I'm going 69.
Hey,
1969. Or the
40.
year 69 BC.
That's Matt's birthday, right?
Yeah, exactly.
42.
1942. All right.
Yeah.
So nobody gets a point that round.
right.
Is it 18?
1899.
I couldn't remember when Porsche were.
And crucially, what killed off the popularity? Which major car manufacturer?
Ford.
Ford.
Milton gets it. 1904.
So do I get a point here?
You do get a point. Yeah.
Like right there, you're going to edit in, yeah?
Somewhere around about where Milton's hand is, maybe slightly underneath it, so it's like a box. Who knows? We'll see what I do with the editing.
Potting!
Yeah, Ford killed it off in 1904.
Why?
Yeah,
that would-
Superior technology.
Exactly, and it was called the System Lona Porsche Mixte.
Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had to read the page.
That's the only reason they bought the Model T, because it was easier to say.
But So again, it's not a new thing, and the first hybrid car ran in the way that Matt thinks is best. Is the only hope of us ever seeing a rotary in a car ever again.
Which Audi
Yeah.
actually were doing very briefly. There was an Audi A1 with a tiny rotary in the boot as a range extender.
Interesting. Didn't
It
know
was a
that.
concept car. But that is the correct thing to do, is a range extender, because the big problem with internal combustion engines is that running them through a range of speeds and loads is inefficient. You have to make an engine that can deal with all of them.
Yep.
If you have an engine that only ever does one rev and one loads, you can make it as efficient as you possibly can.
That's why when you go down the motorway, you get 70 miles to the gallon out of your diesel, but around town you get 40. Because you sat at one rev range on your cruise control doing the same speed, same revs.
And not slowing up and speeding down, which is...
Yeah.
Because then you're braking, which is then you converting speed into heat, and heat is a... Yeah, I did science
So we're
10
gonna
years ago.
give people a chance to redeem themselves because Bryn's on 2, Ryan's on 1,
And I'm terrible.
No, and
and
Matt's
the
on
old
one
man
then.
can't remember anything.
Just
My
go
memory's
four
awful.
questions.
So we've talked about the Prius. We're talking about the 90s. Well, we're still on hybrid. Modern electric cars. So 1974 saw the end of what we'll call classic era electric cars. Fully, pretty much dead in the dirt. 1990s, they return. 2 cars were released. 1996, 1997. Which company, I'll give you multiple choice, launched the first of those?
Is it?
Was
I'm
it
gonna- Vauxhall.
Toyota, General
Well, he's
Motors,
not that one. He's not that one because he's thinking too long.
Ford Motor Company, Volkswagen Audi Group,
Jesus, how many multiple choices
or
are
Honda?
there?
5 choices.
Honda.
I'm going GM. Because I think it might have been under the umbrella of Vauxhall.
Yeah, I would also go GM.
Because there's a car in Forza.
Okay.
I think it's called
It-
Fusion.
Tie-break round. What was the GM car called?
The Vauxhall Fusion or something. The Volt or something. I can't remember it now.
And was it actually a hybrid?
Oh, electric.
It was a. Oh. It didn't make any diesel or petrol noises. I remember it from Forza. It was an electric car.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'd made sure you put automatic gears on because it was faster that way.
It's the General Motors EV1.
I'm thinking of a different car, but
Was released the year before the Toyota Prius.
Nice.
So I'm thinking of a Honda Insight. They did a really early version of the Insight, and it had covered rear wheels,
They did,
like
yeah.
your 60s American cars. But that's obviously a bit later than 96, 97.
Honda Insight Hybrid. Let's just do a quick check.
Because there's a modern version of the Insight.
1999.
I was a bit out. But there's a modern version of the Insight, and it looks exactly like a Prius.
It's because the Prius is the most aerodynamically efficient shape that you can really make a car.
Really?
The
There you go, kids. You heard it here from the engineer. Aerodynamics is ugly.
Yeah, pretty much. It's because you go for the sort of plain wing streamlined thing. Obviously, that really long tail is basically impractical and not really doable, but it doesn't get you a lot of drag reduction. So you chop the tail off a wing and you end up with something that looks like a Prius.
So the reality is, you know, we've worryingly actually. I'm just going to dare to throw this out there for the first time ever recording. We haven't had a whooshy thing yet, which is scary. So Bryn, for continuity's sake, is now putting on his ugly hat. So I think actually, you know, we get onto a really interesting point of what's the future. right? Now, I've got a couple of things that I'd just like to see out of interest and curiosity.
I've got one,
Okay.
and it goes back to might be even an old Top Gear when James May was talking about the hydrogen car, I think made by Honda,
Mm-hmm.
and how
Think,
it worked. But the only problem was, which is sort of technically the same problem electric cars at the moment is to do with their charging stations, and not enough of them. Hydrogen, there's only like 3 stations in the whole of the UK.
Yep.
yeah.
Look, did hydrogen fuel for sale.
The other problem you have with hydrogen, similarly to electricity, is just storing it. Hydrogen in its purest form is highly volatile. You've just got to look at the Hindenburg, and you can see
Question.
how volatile. it is.
Hydrogen is made is in the air, right? No, water.
Yeah.
So what if you have a water tank that then converts,
So
your engine is asking for X amount
Purely-
of fuel, so then it converts.
purely from an engineering point of view, the energy required to split water down to hydrogen and oxygen is far too big to do in
On demand.
on demand
You-
in a
you-
car.
The problem that you have is that you lose energy throughout the whole process. So turning water into hydrogen, you put more energy in than you would get out from the hydrogen. So it doesn't work. If you have a tank of water on the car must carry power to split that water down into hydrogen to get the power back. So hydrogen is another form of battery, essentially. It's just a more efficient electric battery in that you've still got to use more energy than you're going to get out to make some hydrogen, but then you can use the hydrogen to power things that have to move more efficiently than you could use just the electricity.
Oh,
Yeah.
second guess. I'll let Matt go first.
I was just going to say, this is why perpetual energy machines don't exist.
Yeah.
Because you have to put in a little bit to start it, and then you lose a bit of that into friction and all sorts of other things across the whole thing, and then eventually it slows down.
And the same is true of petrol, of course. Petrol isn't free energy. It's just that energy came from the sun, went into plants, stuff ate it, and then it took a very, very long time of it getting crushed by a lot of pressure and energy to turn it into a fuel. So even petrol is less energy than it took to make the petrol. It's just that nature made the petrol quite a long time ago.
Thanks,
Yeah.
nature.
It's
My
like
one is.
nature.
So, Bam, I'll let you go next.
I look at it in a slightly different way, and I know, like we all know, probably the next thing is going to be hydrogen cars, right? Now, if you think about things in a logical, sensible way, I'm still not doing a whooshy thing, Bryn.
I'm just making sure you can't.
Okay. If we look at that in a logical sense and we go, right, so what technological trends has hydrogen done before? So you go from the hydrogen bomb to a fusion bomb.
And
And
this
if
is
we
my
could get
point
to-
about it being really volatile.
Yes, incredibly volatile. But at the point you crack fusion at a level that it doesn't run away and blow up the whole of Chernobyl,
You mean fission?
no.
Fusion is incredibly safe. I've been to a fusion reactor. The beautiful thing about fusion is it takes a tiny amount of fuel to start it, and it requires basically a magnetic field to stop the particles touching the
So
walls of whatever it's
my
containing.
understanding was we hadn't cracked that yet.
Oh no, we have fusion reactors that work for research. They can't generate any power, and CERN, I think, is meant to be the first one that can actually generate power. But the beautiful thing about fusion is because it's so difficult to actually get it to happen. If you have a problem and the reactor ruptures, what happens is fusion just stops happening because it can't
And this
happen apart from in this perfect environment.
And this is where I'm going. So, and the reason I bring this topic up is throughout the thing that never happened.
Yep.
That thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, didn't get the video taken off.
Not yet.
I have been playing a lot of Fallout, and everything's tiny little nuclear reactors. Bryn again trying to stop us have a slide at this episode.
Just in case you pussy out of that that beer show.
I'm not pussying out the beer show. And it's just struck me that if you could get, obviously video game, but theoretically, if you could get a reactor down to the right size and contain it in something that's, you know, in the game yay big as a battery, and jam it in a car and it runs for 100,000 years.
But then we'd all be driving around in nuclear bombs, right?
No, because it's fission, not it's fusion, not fission. There we go.
But wouldn't it have nuclear material?
Still radioactive, but it's
I don't know.
way less bad.
Yep.
Like fission is large, whatever the word is, because I'm not a chemist. Large molecules, you know, big 236 or whatever it is, protons in uranium. Whereas fusion is basically hydrogen and helium. It's such a small atom, it doesn't have much of a half-life. It is radioactive, but really not for that long at all.
So the difference really, Milton, to put it in layman's terms, is fusion is the sun, which generates larger and larger scale materials as the cascade happens through fission, and through fusion, sorry, and fission is Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Both
Chernobyl.
pretty scary.
Yeah. Fission is easy because it's breaking atoms down and you're getting the energy out. Fusion's actually quite hard to do, but
Fission you just ping a neutron at some plutonium.
We seem to have got onto physics rather than cars.
It is
So
pretty
You
far.
know what happens when me and Bryn get into our element, mate?
So
Element. See what you did there.
let me take the two topics and put them together, because if we're talking about efficiency and physics and everything, I want to talk about Formula One just briefly and what they've done with the V6 hybrids.
But Dad, it's boring. It's Formula One. No one overtakes anything anymore.
So
Anyway.
what they changed from the V8s in, what was it, 2013 was the last year of the V8s, and they went to the V6 hybrids in 2014, and everybody hated on the sound. Purely because what they've done is put a turbo in the exhaust pipe and taken the heat and the sound and turned it into energy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they didn't pick a great engine layout for a good exhaust noise. Everyone went, turbos sound terrible, turbos sound terrible. No. V6s sound terrible.
Yeah.
So,
But
Brynny, you saying there should have been V4s or inline 6 or something instead?
They would have sounded better also if they'd done a different layout of V6, which couldn't be done because of the cranks, basically. Because I worked, for anyone watching this who doesn't know, I did work in F1 for a little while in the engines, and one of my actual projects was, what do we have to do to the exhaust layout to make this not sound ass, and what would that do to the performance?
Does the computer just go, no, nothing?
No, can't be done. But my point is, I like the fact that they've managed to turn heat and sound into energy, because one of the inefficiencies of the internal combustion engine is, as well as energy to drive the wheels, you're getting wasted energy of sound and heat through the exhaust pipe. And what Formula One have done, and what you get in some energy recovery systems and stuff like that, is collecting that up and then turning it back into power again to put back into the batteries to then power the car even more.
Which is fantastic. I mean, that's one of the things that a turbocharger does anyway, and one of the things that I always loved about them. And then, like you say, you step that up to the kinetic energy and the turbo energy recovery systems.
Hang
new
on a minute. So does that mean my MX-5 turbo race car is fuel efficient because turbo?
No.
Short answer, no.
Bryn just resisted the temptation to go on a 2-hour-long tirade about fuel efficiency and turbos.
Sorry, is it more green because it's turbo instead of NA?
No. No, because what you've done is taken the same sized NA engine and put a turbo on it.
Which requires more fuel.
Yes, it's using the same amount of fuel when you're not on turbo and more fuel when you're on turbo.
So, in which case, Milton, actually, I am the environmentally friendly one here.
No, because you're still adding more fuel. Because you're revving higher.
But Matt is absolutely right about the F1, the efficiencies in F1. Like the leaps that they made because of those rules are ridiculous. When I left, the engines were up to something like 45% thermal efficiency, which is ridiculous for an engine. The actual magnets or the motor setups that were in the kinetic energy recovery systems were touching on like high 90% efficiencies, which again is like, how can you get that?
Yeah.
And I can tell you how they got that, but it's boring, so carry on.
It's one of those things. I think I do think that we're going about the future in the wrong way. Fundamentally, we're going about things the wrong way, and there's a lot that can be said. The intention, I think, behind the 2030, 2035 decisions is right. The gut feeling is we all
Something
agree.
has to change.
We all agree we can't keep producing cars like my Stagia forever and still live on this planet, but we could move to Mars and then I can kill that world too.
Martian racetrack.
I'm in. But
It's a long commute.
It's about 44 years at the moment, I think.
yeah, but we could get some
Each
episodes.
way.
We could get some episodes in the can at least on the flight there.
Welcome to episode 75,000 of Shooting the Shift. There are only 3 of us because Matt has finally died in his old age.
So, but like, you know, the reality is the future's going to be weird. I honestly think, by the way, by 2035, it's not all going to be about electric, and we will have wasted a boatload of money building this network to support electric cars. My home, if I wanted to drive a Tesla tomorrow, I'd have to run an extension lead out the house.
One of the other things, so circling a little bit back on to efficiencies, but a little bit more on your points, I think we're going around this the wrong way. I think more than anything, driving style affects your efficiency more than anything else in the world.
Yeah, that's a whole...
And
Yeah,
I won't bring Top Gear up again because they did this. I can't remember when exactly they did this, but they did a race between it was either an M3 or an M5 and a Toyota Prius. And it was an efficiency test. You think, oh yeah, the Prius will win this hands down. The way that they did it was the Prius had to go and drive flat out as fast as he could. And the M3 or the M5, whatever it was, just had to keep up. The Prius did 19 miles to the gallon, and the M car did 21. Because it had more power, it had an easier time of keeping up with the Prius, where the Prius was at the top of the rev range the whole way round.
yeah. It's a comfort blanket, essentially. Turning around and saying hybrids will save the day, or even electric will save the day, right? It doesn't matter what way you solve that problem. We're still burning dinosaurs somewhere down the productivity line.
Yes.
And that takes us to, is there a future where actually you maybe have more people are like me and have multiple cars, and you have a local car that's fueled by wind, solar, tidal, whatever renewable, that's electric, and then you have a much longer range, much more costly to run, old Land Rover sat on your drive. But you use it for the longer drives where you don't want to run out of fuel.
Question is though, there's two. Well, sorry, Bryn, I'll let. Is what about we make instead of just doing petrol, things like E85. That's just petrol plus corn, isn't it?
Well, they are doing that. They're changing it from being
Brazil
I think
is
E5 to
Brazil is
E10.
largely biofuel based. They make
Can't you
most
get
of their
100%
fuel
biofuel?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brazil
So why
is
don't-
Brazil is largely Brazil doesn't have any native oil reserves. So what they do is they grow and make octane rich fuel through crops.
So why that has many advantages. One, it's not free, but it's a lot cheap. It's renewable rather,
Mm-hmm.
and it's green. So then it takes out carbon and
I think the other thing to point out with
absolutely eats fuel, traditional fuel lines though.
but then that's an easy change, though, isn't it?
The problem with all of this is that you don't get something for nothing. Okay, so where do you find petrol underground? Where do you grow petrol on top of the ground? So you have to have a lot of space to grow biofuel. You have to put a lot of water in to grow crops, to grow biofuel. And most of that space you probably need for growing food for people because there's too many people and all of that stuff. So there is no right answer for any of these. And I think the reason that there's no right answer is because the only right answer is stop fucking driving cars.
what
I mean,
so
that's
one of the
really controversial, Bryn, because that kills this channel in quite a big way. I'm going to dare to suggest, actually, Bryn, there's another way. Algae can be grown, and yeast can be taught to convert sugars into ethanol. I actually weirdly did an A-level project on how I could make alcohol from non-fructose based sugars. And this is why me and Bryn will disappear down a science rabbit hole at this point if we get the chance. But in theory, you could potentially just grow giant tanks of algae to produce that fuel. The practical reality of that is, again, as Bryn says, it needs ground. But the giant tanks you could put in a skyscraper and use less floor space to
Isn't
to
the
achieve
planet like 70% water?
that. Yep.
What if we just turn all of the oceans into petrol?
I'm not wrong.
But
No.
you know, and there's a million different ways to come at this problem. We could just put sails on all our cars. We could go back to horses. That'd work.
Still
Horsepower.
feed the horses.
Yeah, horses aren't particularly energy efficient either. No living thing's particularly energy efficient.
We could all become vegetarians and take all the cows that are in the fields right now. And
That's
use
an
them.
interesting point, though, and I'm going to make a minor segue here
Okay.
to not vegetarianism. I'm not suggesting we all become vegetarian, but
Good.
eating meat is horribly inefficient. And this could solve this.
Fuel.
So this could solve your problem of not having enough land mass.
So we should eat people instead.
Would work. I'm just
Could do, because it
Soylent
goes
Green.
back to the whole. It goes back to the whole converting energy again. So, to make a piece of meat that you can eat, you have the sun feeds the grass gets eaten by the cow gets slaughtered, and then we eat it.
Yep.
Or the sun goes into the plant, and then we eat the plant.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And to keep so many acres of cow, you need a lot more room than you need for the same amount of plant-based food, as well as water and all the other stuff. And for the same amount of
We
plant-based
are
food, you
getting
only need a
into-
quarter of the land.
We are getting into a dangerous area
I see what you're saying.
where I will issue a statement, a very blunt and to the point statement, and I will defend myself before cancel culture hits us by saying I have Asperger's and sometimes I speak my mind.
yeah, just fucking no.
I have just played that card. I've just
Yeah.
broken.
Wow.
I have broken some hippies who don't know what to do now. But the reality is all. And Bryn's making me keep it in.
I'm a unicorn.
all creatures with canines, including human beings, have evolved to eat meat and require certain vitamins that only meat can provide. What we then have to do in order to provide those vitamins when we're not eating meat is chemically produce those vitamins, which again has an energy cost for the environment. So turning around and saying going vegan and not eating animals is not the answer, as with
No.
every
I've
answer
got-
that we've come up
the-
with today.
No matter
I've got a
what we
counter
do,
for that. That's for Matt's side.
Okay.
Is you said to think about meat, but what about fish?
Are we going back
Fish-
to the turn all the oceans into food point, Milton?
Well, you put algae on top of the water, loads of fish underneath it, so we can feed ourselves, and all the land is for fuel.
I mean, staying off topic here, that won't work because the fish need light to live.
Yeah, but we're getting into a whole ecological point that we don't really need to go into. We've already been talking for about 50 minutes about this, so let's get back to cars before a tangent makes me put
Yeah.
in a slashy thing.
I do want a V8 though.
It's just the sound of a V8. So, I think the future is this, and everybody feel free to contradict me. I think the future is classic cars.
And just keeping them running instead of building new ones.
Keeping them running. Get all Mad Max on the problem.
This
Isn't-
is also correct. If you there have been a lot of studies done about the life cycle of cars, and one of the biggest problems, as I think Matt already touched on earlier, is if you say we all need to change to electric cars right now, that implies you have to scrap every non-electric car. The energy cost of creating new cars is hideous. It is statistically, I used to know there was a figure for miles per gallon for your car. If it's above a certain amount, it is better to run that car until it literally dies before buying another car. And it wasn't that high. It's like
Yeah.
30 miles per gallon or something.
13.
Require 30.
But this goes back to my point of what Mazda were doing in making the SkyActiv X engine. And their point about that was, if in the Western world and more developed worlds, getting a charging point for your electric car is not a problem. Go out to rural Japan and try and find a charge point for your Tesla.
But
It's
even
not
then,
going to happen.
even then, their fix for the problem was still a new car. And one of the big problems is at the moment, like when I was a kid, obviously I was a kid, so I wasn't buying that many cars, but not many people bought a new car and then changed it in 3 years and then changed it in 3 years. That is really quite recent now. People are buying new cars more disposably. So it doesn't matter how much more efficient you make the next car. What you actually needed to be doing is you buy a car, you drive that car until that car is undrivable,
Yep.
and then you buy another car.
But I
So
don't
actually-
think that's not a case of buying another car, though. That's a case of people leasing cars so they can have the most modern car all the time,
Yeah, but what
trying
happens
to
the
look
last one?
big.
So the
They
moral,
sell
the
it on to
moral,
somebody else.
the moral of the
And who buys
story,
them?
the moral of the story from this episode, and I think this is a really good point to end, is stop trying
we're
to
not
impress
done.
other.
We're not
Brent?
fucking done here.
We're not done here. Okay, this is going to be a longer than an hour episode, then, people.
Still going.
Keep going. All right. I'm willing to get onto the point here is that actually, you know, I've had it said to me, your Stadia is so old. No, it's not.
And
Should be old.
it's not that old.
It's from 2000. It's a 20-year-old car. It's not old. It is not at all old. There are significantly older cars on British roads right now.
That shouldn't be on the road.
There's cars from the 20s still rolling about that are functional
I do
because
have-
they're well maintained.
Yeah.
A good point about the cost and even electric, because the wind farms, the electric blades that apparently they've only got a 25-year life cycle.
Yep.
And at the moment, to get rid of them, what they do is they just put them in the ground and bury them.
Yep.
So it's huge fiberglass 20-foot blades and they just bury them. They won't decompose.
This leads on to a point that I looked up when we were talking about electric cars earlier. Renewable energy in the UK. I'll make this a quiz question. Ban, you can be involved in this one.
Okay.
What percentage of electricity generation in 2018 in the UK was renewable?
20.
I
9.
knew this.
20%.
9. I'm going for.
Bryn?
I want to say it was 30 something, but it wasn't as high as it should be.
No, Bam's closest. 17.1%. So at the
I'd
end
like
of
to
the day,
clarify, any question I get right at this point is worth 4 points, because you've all had 4 questions.
but my point is, at the end of the day, you're going out and you're buying a efficient electric car, and then the odds are you're charging it off fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So, there is another study which I will try and find so that we can put in the description, because it's really, really simple to look at and it's interesting. Now,
Do we pause it now?
Sorry?
Do we pause the recording now and you go find it?
No.
In the
I know
description.
exactly who it was by. I will put it in the description.
There you go, Bam. There's your swoosh.
There's
Ricardo.
no swoosh. We're keeping going. Bryn, change hats. Change hats, Bryn, quick.
Far away.
Please put a Christmas hound.
Ricardo did a study on what powers your car life cycle emissions, which is called a wheel to well or well to wheel. So it basically,
that's what Mazda did.
Yeah, it takes account of actually getting the fuel, turning into fuel, getting the fuel to the car, driving the car, making the car, complete emissions. And I think it will surprise you as well what kind of a difference it makes. And again, I can't remember the figure, but it's something like in the UK, because of how we make our energy right now, 40 something miles per gallon is the cutoff. If your car does better than 40 miles per gallon, don't buy an electric car, because a lot of your energy will statistically come from things like coal and nuclear, which, although you think of as actually it's a green fuel, it has no emissions. Getting and refining nuclear material uses loads of diesel trucks and transporting it around the world and transporting it here. And it's actually worse. Nuclear fuel currently is worse than coal. It's just ridiculous. But if you power your car on wind, fucking incredibly efficient.
And I think that's the bit that people forget is making all these things. You've got everything is powered by diesel, and you look at a big tanker ship with their 10,000 horsepower massive diesel engines. What's the alternative fuel for that?
Hydrogen.
Oh my God. I want to see the battery for one of them.
Wait.
And that's my point. It's
Matt,
not going to be an electric tanker ship.
Matt, it's not. There's another solution. And given, like all things we've discussed before, it existed in the 1800s.
Quiz question.
Sails.
Oh my God. I'm just Pirates of the Caribbean.
I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone that I could get on board with going back to sails and me just being a pirate.
On board, see what we did there?
Yeah.
Dad joke number 2.
I'm on a roll this week, Milton.
Dad approved.
But that kind of proves that electricity is not the answer. I think electricity and hybrids are a good stopgap to extend the supply of fuel that we've got left and make it go further. But we've got to have something else at the other end.
So yes. I think I'm going to ask.
I want to say on that, Bam. I want to say on that.
Okay.
Obviously, bringing this law in.
Somebody at my door, so you're going to have to go swoosh.
A few moments later.
So we're really sorry, everyone. We were going for a one-take episode, but unfortunately, Matt got a delivery at 9:30 in the evening from Amazon. So thanks a lot for that, Amazon. As much as you pay us affiliates money, dick move. Matt, beforehand, you were talking about a thing.
Yeah. See, electricity and hybrid is a good stopgap to extend the use of the low remaining fossil fuels and petrol and diesel that we've got left. but it's not going to be the solution. And I've said this for years. I don't know whether hybrid is. I don't know whether that's the correct solution. But electric and hybrid are not the long-term solution. They're a good stopgap.
No,
Okay.
and they're a stopgap that we do need, though. It's good that this legislation came forward because everybody knows, as much as people bang on about change needing to happen, it just doesn't happen unless somebody in government puts their foot down and says, this is where we've got to do it. Because like motorsport, like competition, or like when there's a war, there is no greater leap in technology than when you really, really, really have to win. And this is one of those times. And we need electric as a stopgap because we need that technology for the next thing. If it's hydrogen, we still need batteries to work. We need electricity management. We need high voltage motors. All of that stuff needs to exist. So electric is good, but it's only a stopgap. Do not believe you are buying an electric car and saving the environment. You're just paving the way. You can have some smugness for paving the way, but that's about it.
So what we're really talking about longer term then, Bryn, is a hydrogen generator with electric power.
Yes, which now, so I've done a lot of stuff with hydrogen at uni and stuff. I find it really, really interesting. I took some optional modules in it. And the other thing that I find really interesting is how quickly that has moved on. The things that I learned 5 years ago are already out of date because the hydrogen is fantastic. It's not magic. It's not 100% efficient, and it has a maximum efficiency. The laws of thermodynamics dictate that it can't be any more efficient than something like 73% for one type of fuel cell and 80 something for the other. But it's really, really good. The problems that you have with it are carbon monoxide in the atmosphere utterly fucking destroys them, and we still don't really know why, or we didn't then, maybe we do now. And the other problem is that they take a long time to warm up. You can't just jump in your car, turn your hydrogen fuel cell on and go. They have to warm up before they can actually work. When I was learning about them, that was the biggest issue. Now you can buy hydrogen cars that warm up in the time it takes you to walk out of your house. So it's advancing so fast. So I think hydrogen is the way forward. And as long as it's not illegal to burn it, you can still have internal combustion engines for those people who really, really care. They'll run on hydrogen. Rotaries, in fact, I mean, they're never going to be efficient, but hydrogen works quite well because one of the issues with a rotary is it's a very, very slow burn. One of the good things about hydrogen, and a problem for most engines, is it's a really, really quick burn. So you put the quick burning fuel in the slow burning engine, hey presto, normal burn. But yeah, if we can burn hydrogen, I'm going to be a happy man.
So basically, moral of the story is, this week,
We don't have a clue.
no one knows where it's going to go, but for right now, no matter whose camp you fall into, Bryn and the future is hydrogen, and me and the future is retro. Or Matt and he likes Werther's Originals.
I've got the answer, Bam. It's really simple.
Okay,
Well, I don't know why we didn't think of it.
go on.
MX-5.
The answer is always MX-5.
I mean, it's light.
And on that,
On that, no, we can't use someone else's catchphrase, guys.
No, we can't.
On that, revelation. This is the end of the episode, guys. So thanks for bearing with us for the sciencey bits where me and Bryn got probably too engineering and techie for a YouTube channel.
And if there wasn't enough of that for you and you want to talk about it more, next time you see me, just ask, and I'll go on for another fucking 2 hours. I swear to God.
Just run up to him and go, Bryn, hybrids.
hydrogen.
And if you'd
Hydrogen.
like to see us put out on this channel a series where Bryn just explains stuff, let us know in the comments below. Hit subscribe so you don't miss when that inevitably happens and we run out of ideas. And I've been Bam. He's been Matt.
Bye.
He's been Milton.
Bye.
Ooh,
And he's been Annoyed Bryn.
word.
Cut.